Welcome to Beyond the Wheeze, the podcast where perseverance meets potential. I'm Josh Realm, public speaker, marathon runner, asthma advocate, and your host as we explore the intersection of health, fitness, and resilience. Whether you're managing asthma, chasing a new personal best, or simply looking for inspiration, Beyond the Wheeze is here to show you that no challenge is too great to overcome. Together, we'll uncover stories, insights, and strategies to help you push beyond your limits. It's time to breathe deeply, move forward, and unlock your true potential, one step at a time. Breathing is something most people don't think twice about, but for those living with chronic respiratory conditions, every breath is a conscious effort. My guest today, Scott Bailey, knows this really all too well. As a COPD patient and advocate, Scott has dedicated himself to not only managing his own condition, but also inspiring others to take control of their lung health. Scott has found ways to press play on life despite the challenges of COPD. Through exercise, community support, and the Lung Health Foundation's Fitness for Breath program, he's learned how to improve his respiratory control and stay active. Whether it's golfing at Trillium Woods, in Belleville, or finding ways to modify activity so he can keep moving, Scott proves that a well-managed life with COPD is possible. Today, we'll dive into his journey, the lessons he's learned, and the steps anyone struggling with breathlessness can take to reclaim their lives. If you've ever wondered how to turn obstacles into opportunities, this episode is for you. So, Scott, welcome to Beyond the Wheeze.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
So, Scott, we met a couple weeks ago, a couple short weeks ago in Toronto. We were at the annual Better Breathing Week put on by the Lung Health Foundation here in Canada. A really nice venue. Super impactful week, I'd say. We were both fortunate to be able to share our stories during the conference and attend various workshops and voice our input as well. Being the patient advocates, I find you don't really see enough of that. It's more healthcare professionals talking about what it's like for asthma patients or COPD patients, as opposed to us telling them, well, our experiences and how it affects our families, our day-to-day lives.
It always gets me, Josh, because I know people do the research and doctors and everything else that, I know how you feel. No, you don't. You really don't. I know you think you do, but you don't. Hell of a disease.
So let's start right off from the top. I know we had spoken about your journey last week, but so the listeners know about who you are, how it all started, and why you're here today. So if you don't mind, can you share your journey with COPD, maybe when you were diagnosed and what led to that diagnosis?
Funny. I go away fishing with my buddies. I have 4 or 5 guys that used to go, I still do, go fishing way, and we've done it for like 45 years. And we were back in the Trump Lake, which we had a portage back to get into. And I canoed the whole day. I had my buddy in front, and I said, you fish, and I'll fish when I want, and let's go. And so we did it. And on our way out, we were there about 10 o'clock, and about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we were coming out and started pulling the canoe out. I was in the front, and we were dragging it through the first portage, and I fell down. I just couldn't catch my breath. They thought I was having a heart attack. And I said, no, it's not that. It's not my heart. I just can't breathe. And so I went on and on and on, and got back to the cottage and felt good again. When I got back to Burlington, I went and saw my doctor right away, and he prescribed that I would go into Joseph Brand and do a test. And that's where I found out I had COPD.
And it just came that quickly, that sudden.
Yeah. And I had quit smoking already for 2 years when that came around. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'll be able to do some more things, feel healthier, and not the case. So anyway, that was the start of it all. It was not a great script from my doctor, but having quit for 2 years, the cigarette smoking, and I thought this was going to be good. Right. It turned out not to be so good.
And how old were you when you were diagnosed?
Well, it was 2010, so I think 15 years off me now, so about 55.
So how has that impacted your perspective on health and fitness? How has your health and fitness really changed since 2010? And does it continue to change daily or weekly or monthly? Do you notice these changes as time progresses?
Well, when it first happened, we were in the midst of possibly retiring. So I put a new kitchen, felt healthy enough. I put a new kitchen in our house myself, and did all the exercise work and everything else I did, and that was fine. And I couldn't do that now. Oh my God, it's a struggle, and it is a struggle every day. It's a struggle, and it's hard to relate to someone unless they really know. It's like, you tell people things. You ask them, do you think about breathing? And they go, no. You go, well, I do every day, all day.
Yeah.
Because I have to. And it's not a spot to be in.
Unfortunately, right? And it's not just, other members of the public that don't really, think twice about breathing, but doctors as well. So the people that are there helping us, I mean, they understand on paper what it might be like for somebody like yourself dealing with COPD, myself dealing with asthma. But in reality, do they know how it feels? And it finds a really challenging gap to fill or to expand on, I guess, when you're speaking with those individuals. I went to the emergency department, I'd say now about a month and a half ago. And for me to go at this point in my life, when I've dealt with severe asthma my entire life, I mean, I'll hop on my mask, I'll take my salbutamol nibs, I'll take all my inhalers. I'll start myself on 50 milligrams of prednisone. At this point, I'm used to doing what I need to do, and self-medicating. When I go to the hospital, it's because something is wrong. And I went in and they triaged me. They hooked me up, checked my oxygen, checked everything, and asked me why I was there. And I said, well, I'm here because I have an asthma attack. It's been bad for the last couple of days. It's a lot worse tonight. I'm nervous for tomorrow. They checked my oxygen and my oxygen was 96%. And they said, oh, you look fine. Just wait in the waiting room, but I will warn you, it's an 8-hour wait. And I said to her, I understand how it looks, but I'm about to pass out right now. I don't come in unless I really have to come in. And she told me at that point, it might be quicker to go to a clinic and see a doctor there as opposed to being at the hospital, which is, in my opinion, where I needed to be. Fortunately, they took me seriously. They know I had been in the hospital many times over the last couple of years. They took me in, they gave me, masks back to back to back. But what if you're somebody that can't advocate for themselves? What if you're a kid? I have 2 girls, I have twin girls, they're 2 years old, and they're both on inhalers now. Well, we don't really understand how they feel exactly because they can't communicate that with us. So how are they supposed to be taken seriously when we take them into a hospital, right? It's really challenging. So back to what you said, you don't really know how we feel.
No, not at all. No, I'd never had prednisone or anything like that. So I haven't gone into the hospitals, thank God. But I can see and feel how it's worsening.
Yeah.
And that's really the struggle. Back in June, I did the 6-minute walk and I didn't stop. I went back and forth. I just did it on last Wednesday, and I couldn't do the 6-minute walk. So it is really starting to come up fast. But you got to keep exercising.
So what does a typical day look like for you in terms of managing your COPD?
First thing I do is I wake up. When I wake up, I grab my one inhaler and I take a couple of shots and relax for another couple minutes in bed. And then I get up, come downstairs, try and drink a bottle of water and have some coffee and read my internet and my messages and stuff, and then proceed to go upstairs and get dressed and shower or whatever, and then start trying to plan the day, which I have to plan the days in advance. You just don't get up and throw your shoes on and out the door you go. I can't do that. I put my shoes on, go, and then I have to sit in the car for a while to catch my breath again. It's not the most fun thing to do, but that's how you have to do things. So you get used to it in a way. My wife does that ton of stuff for me, which, if something's upstairs, she'll I say, oh, Jesus, upstairs. Well, I'll go get it. Instead of me running upstairs.
Yeah.
Like today, she was outside shoveling the driveway. Stuff that I used to be able to do. And I can't do that anymore. So it's very frustrating to me for that. I was a very athletic person all my life. And for that to be taken away is pretty tough. Pretty tough.
We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago, right? That feeling of your wife having to do the driveway, for example, to shovel the driveway while you're sitting there watching. As a man, I can tell you it impacts you for sure. It's not something you want to see. And that's something else that goes hand in hand with those illnesses such as this is, well, it also takes a mental toll, an emotional toll.
Absolutely, mental and big time. There's a big issue with that too, and you get to a point you go, Jesus, I don't know if I can deal with this much longer,
Mm-hmm.
And you think about then you think about your kids and everything else, and you go, yeah, I can deal with it here. So that's kind of cool. So
you've been involved with Fitness for Breath for a couple of years now, and how has that helped you and to improve your breathing and overall well-being?
I'm not sure about improving, but it's maintained it to a big extent. And you get on there and they let us on like 10 minutes before class starts. And it's, there's a bunch of people on there that we know each other. It's like family and we'll talk to each other. And it helps. There's some ideas that come up and you do things and we do something else and try things. And it's good in that respect, but there's different things that happen. People that are on oxygen. I'm like you. I don't need oxygen. I can't get oxygen because my oxygen blood level, my oxygen in my blood is like 95, 96. So I don't need oxygen, even though it looks like I need oxygen. But anyway, talking to people and seeing them, they have the oxygen doing stuff around their nose to do exercises and stuff, and they're there doing it, and they're sitting down doing their exercises, but they're doing them, that's the best thing in the world. And then there's some of us that stand up and do our exercises the same as them, but it works out really well.
So many people with lung conditions feel like exercise is out of reach. We kind of briefly spoke about this already. What would you say to someone who is hesitant to get active?
For the lung health exercise program, if you just get on there and just do a little bit, you don't have to sweat or anything else. You just have to do a little bit, and eventually it'll make you feel better about yourself, about that you're not a burden or anything else. But it also makes you feel that, hey, I can do a little bit, which is great. And maybe tomorrow I'll do a little bit more, which really helps your mental side of things too.
And having COPD now for 15 years, going on 15 years, have you found, or is there any benefit that you know of for COPD patients to exercise? Does it help condition your lungs as it would, say, for myself? Or is it, as you say, to kind of just help you along the way?
I don't think it does it a lot for your lungs, other than maybe you can breathe easier to a certain extent. But I think what it does do for you is it gives you your muscles activate more so in your legs and your arms and in your chest, and it helps in that respect. It keeps your lungs at the same level instead of going down more, which I don't know if you've seen the stats or anything else about lungs, but when you have COPD, you start here and it just tails off because that's what happens with your lungs. So if you can stay here longer before it goes down, then you're in better shape.
So in the introduction, I mentioned, that you're finding ways to press play on life. We've talked about that briefly with your day-to-days. And you said you golf regularly. How do you adapt activities like that to make them work for you? Do you take breaks? Do you go out, only say once, twice a week? How do you adapt those activities to your lungs?
I usually play once or twice a week. And I have, say like Wednesdays, for instance, is one of the days. And I have 3 other buddies of mine that we met on the golf course. And we play every Wednesday. And they're great. My cart has a blue flag on it, which allows me to get closer to the greens. And, if sometimes if the ball's close to the hole, they'll go, don't worry, but I'll pick it up for you, or, give me. Not always. Like if I'm having a good round, I play everything out. And it's very good. My friends, Jim, Greg, and Greg, they help me out immensely, when I'm playing with them. Good. And they know my circumstances and they're very good at it. And they're very nice to do things like that, or else it'd be more of a struggle for me. So, but with them helping, it's a lot easier.
So a funny story there. I didn't know about the blue flag on the golf courses, so that's really to know. I can tell you my first experience going golfing, at least with a golf cart. So with my brother, just bought a new set of, I think they were Dunlop golf clubs from Canadian Tire. So certainly not going to, crush any balls or anything like that. But I didn't know that you weren't allowed to drive the golf carts on the greens. That was my first time golfing. That was my first time meeting Marshall. And that was also my first time getting kicked out of a golf course. Fortunately, it was hole two, so I got my money back. But I was asked to leave and not come back.
Never driven on a green.
Yeah, I see now. I mean, I see now why you shouldn't. Now that, I've been golfing for years, I see why you shouldn't. How do you balance pushing yourself to stay active while also recognizing when you need to slow down?
You get used to it. You get used to doing what you can do, because, if you do more, you're going to be short of breath. So it's a weird thing to think about, but this is all I can do. I can't do that. I'm going to get really tired and my breath is going to be short. And it's like going outside. You have to plan to do that. You just don't get up, throw your shoes on, and out the door and go. And it just doesn't work that way.
We'll move on a little bit to advocacy and awareness. So obviously I met you at us kind of both engaging in our own advocacy work. So in those regards, I'll ask a few questions on that. One, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about COPD? Because I'm sure you hear a lot of them. I know one that I can think of in the top of my head is, well, COPD, you get COPD because you smoke, but it's not always the case. I think it's something like 1 in 4 people get COPD and they've never smoked a day in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. 1 in 4, by the end of your lifetime, you will have some form of COPD. It is that bad. It's not just smoking. I smoked, so I did it to myself. I understand that, but it's not the point whether you did it to yourself. I mean, there's the air we breathe could be cause for COPD. I once knew a lady that had COPD, never had it, never smoked a day in her life, and she passed away. But she had when she was young, she had like a flu or virus and stuff, and that's what caused it when she got older. So it's not just that. And until we get people thinking away from that aspect of it, it's going to be the same for everybody. They're going to think that's what happens, and that's why it happens.
And I feel like you hear it all too often. Somebody gets lung cancer and you automatically assume, oh, because they smoked or because someone in their family smoked and they were around it all the time. But like lung cancer, COPD is very much the same. It's something you can just get. Definitely, in my opinion, the most heard misconception of COPD. Do you have any others that you can name?
Well, it's like, you remember seeing Katie doing her speech up there.
Yeah.
Up on stage, 34-year-old, 4-stage lung cancer and some brain cancer. Never smoked a day in her life.
Yeah.
Could be from radon, which probably was. Radon gas is horrendous. And it's in a lot of homes in Ontario and down east especially. It's amazing down east. And I think you know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
You're talking about. But even I used to love, I would turn my car around in the fall when people were burning leaves just to smell that leaf or smell. burning leaves. I can't do that anymore because that would just really get my lungs going. But that was beautiful. That was a smell I remember to this day. Like, I mean, look at the fire smoke west last summer and the year before that with all the smoke coming into Ontario and stuff. That stuff is not good. Anyways.
Yeah, her speech was amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, here I am. I spoke after her. So I got up after her and everyone's, clapping and she had a very emotional story. And she's obviously a very exuberant, exciting, happy person. It's really sad to hear, but also at the same time, it's great to have somebody like Katie there to talk about her illness, her diagnosis, her story, her journey, and to do it with some form of hope. And it was really good to hear. Like I said, really difficult to get up and speak after her, but very good to hear. And actually, I spoke with Katie after the conference, and she's going to be on a podcast at some point, anyways, in the next few weeks, I'm thinking.
That goes up to another point that we were discussing there a bit, but when the cost, like we said, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 are going to develop it. The government just hasn't figured out how much this is going to cost in the long run. With all of us that have COPD or even been diagnosed with it, it's for the hospital. It's going to be phenomenal with how many people have this disease and what it's going to do to the cost of things. They're saying by the year 2030, it's going to be over $9 billion in costs to health, which is staggering. Fifth largest. I think fifth largest death is from COPD.
I find, with the exception of lung cancer falling under cancer, as it is respiratory illnesses, COPD, asthma, things like that, I don't want to say they go unnoticed. They certainly don't. But from a financial standpoint, they eat up a lot of money. They're a huge burden on our healthcare system. And I feel like there's still a stigma there, and they still don't take us very seriously when we show up to an emergency room. So, we have what's called like the revolving door, right? So I'm going to the emergency room to be told to, given essentially a stack of medication, to be told to leave and not really have somebody there, like a CRE to maybe kind of help me out. Because what I need half the time might be something else, which kind of leads me to my next question, actually. So you've taken an active role in raising awareness. That's why we're here today. What motivates you to share your story?
Since I got this disease and started advocating, my idea is if I can help one person, I've done my job. I think I've helped a lot more than that. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to do so, and to make things a little easier for everyone with research and getting spirometry tests, because it's tough to find those things up north where you are.
You're so right on that. And actually, I have Jeff Beach, which is CEO of Asthma Canada. He's in next week, and I know he's going to want to speak a lot about spirometry testing. But yeah, up north, it's crazy. We want employment. Well, we're usually going to Barrie, which for me is a 4-hour drive, 3.5, if the traffic and the roads are good. For this little device, which you can get now like this, you can get smaller than your phone. You could probably buy one online for $70-$80. Now, the issue, from what I understand, is interpreting that data. But I mean, I'm hopeful that in the next few years, because of the advancements in AI and technology and whatnot, we could move to sort of like a triage system, even with spirometry testing, where something's flagged or not flagged, and it gets sent to the right person. I don't know. Maybe I'm hopeful for that. Maybe we're far away from it, but I do think that we're going to see some advancements. I can only hope so, anyways, because I know personally that is something that I've dealt with, is not getting spirometry testing when I need it, and I'm a recognized severe asthmatic. But you also have these new undiagnosed asthmatics who need that spirometry testing to get diagnosed so they can get the proper treatment. And if they live up north, like where I am, it's next to impossible. Or even where you are, it's not easy.
Well, 2 million people have been diagnosed with COPD, and there's over 1 million that haven't. So think about that in Canada. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, most people only have good things to say about the Canadian healthcare system. I do typically, but yeah, when it comes to getting drugs, medications approved. It's a lot harder here in Canada. So they have a lot more stuff available to them out down south. And to get it passed here in Canada, it can be next to impossible.
Well, it's funny, there was one lady that I was talking to, so the sponsor was there in the room, and she said, well, what you tried this? And I said, not in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, have you tried this one? And I said, not in Canada. She was originally from the States, and all these things were passed in the States, where us, it takes 3-4 years where that's once it's here, with all the research and everything that they just don't pass things like that. And in the States, the FDA passes a lot of things. And that's why when you see the commercials and may cause this isn't the big line of may causes, it's so they can protect themselves. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that because everything is done so well that there's nothing left to be found. Eventually, hopefully that changes a bit somehow.
If someone listening to this podcast is a newly diagnosed COPD patient, what advice would you give them?
Get a lung health coach. Okay? There is lung health coaches at the Lung Health Foundation, and they really know their stuff. I have one now, and her name's Laura. She's great. She meets with you every couple of weeks, and you talk about things, and and it helps you, and it's understanding what's going to happen to you and how you breathe and what exercising can do for you. And it really gives you the whole big picture of your whole life in the next, 5-10 years. So that's the interesting part.
What I'll do, Scott, is I'll get a link to Lung Health Foundation and those resources that we've kind of spoken about in this podcast, and I'll make sure that they're included on my socials as well. So anybody that comes across this podcast on YouTube or the clips that I post on Instagram or whatnot, will see those links. They can click on them and they could find those resources that you're speaking of.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you. That's very nice.
So what are some small practical steps people can take to regain control over their breathing and quality of life? I know you have a pretty big maybe procedure upcoming, right? So you're right now seeing about getting a double lung transplant. Now I know that might not be reasonable for most people or a lot of people, but as I understand it, in your condition in this stage, it is something that they're looking at.
Yeah, they are starting to look at it. The first time I went in to talk to the doctors about it, I was all pretty hyped up about having it done. And I talked to a few people and they said, keep your lungs as long as you can. Because they have to take a lot of medicine after you have it done, rejection and everything else. But my lungs are severe. So there's that FEV1 down to about 23%. And most of them people are around 35 that they have, and if you're at 35, you're in good shape, principally. But anyways, that they said to me, just because you have a transplant doesn't mean you'll be able to do all the things you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And that really threw me for a loop because I wasn't looking at it that way. I was looking at it like, hey, this is going to be a second life for me. And now with the way things are, talking to them, and now I'm going through all the tests, to get there, even just to see if I can get on the list. So I still don't know yet. So far, so good. All the tests come back pretty good. So we'll see shortly, I guess, in the next 6 months.
Okay, good to hear. Definitely keep me in the loop on that. And although not a practical step typical people with COPD can take, it is a necessary one for certain individuals that get to a certain stage as yourself. So yeah, absolutely keep me in the loop. Are there any resources or programs that you recommend, and how would you go about finding those?
If you talk to people in the lung health exercise program, they say, oh, I do this one, I do this one, I'm part of the Firestone thing, I'm part of, and you really, it's like if you wanted to exercise, you could exercise 5 days a week on one program or another. So there's lots out there if you need it.
So looking ahead, Scott, what are your goals moving forward, both in your personal health and in your advocacy work as well?
Personal health, I just, one way or the other, I got to figure out what's going on, right? And eventually somebody will tell me some good news. Advocacy, whatever they need, it helps me feel better about the situation. And that's really great. That's really great.
I second that as well. I appreciate you being here, talking to the listeners, talking to myself as well. You're educating me about COPD because I don't know a whole lot about it. I'll be honest, but sort of kind of why I do what I do. So I'm 34 years old. I've been doing this asthma advocacy now for 4 years, not quite as long as you. But what started that for me is I feel like I didn't really, and I don't want to say beat my asthma because I never beat my asthma, but I learned how to live with it, how to manage it, how to condition my lungs. I learned my triggers and I learned how to mitigate those triggers, but it took me 30 years to do it. And I told myself for 30 years, doctors told me for 30 years, you can't run, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, I started running, and what did it do? It helped me so much. It benefited me. It conditioned my lungs. I can be around, triggers more without needing my inhaler. I can forget my inhaler going out now. So that's one huge thing for me. That's why I do what I do, is so I could reach those little Joshes who are 13, 14 years old in school, maybe, that might be thinking, I can't do this, I can't do that, I might as well give up. It's not right. So I'm here to fill a gap. I feel like you're here to fill a gap as well. And I appreciate you, Scott. I really do.
Well, I'm looking at your situation. Last year, the year before, I we were in Ottawa and talking to the MPs. It was pretty fascinating. There was one gentleman and his wife had lost a 5-year-old from asthma. Pretty touching. Very, very difficult. I don't know how they did it, and I don't know how they do it. But they were advocating. They're on your side, and they're on my side.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before, I have 2-year-old girls. I couldn't imagine losing one of them. It's tough. And that's it as well. I'm paving the road a little bit more for my kids. And hopefully when they get to be my age, if asthma isn't, eradicated, which it won't be, it never will be, but if progress isn't made, I hope that they could be there, given their 2 cents to help pave that road forward more to make progress and facilitate that research in any way that they can. So final remarks, Scott. So is there anything you'd like to mention, say, or plug to our listeners?
Just the exercise, whether you're in a program like Lung Health or you're doing it somewhere else, just exercise a little bit and build up more exercise and more leg strength, more arm strength, and more lung strength. And don't judge people when it comes to COPD, because it might not be from cigarettes. Yeah. It might be that they inherited it. They might, because people do inherit that disease. And it might be that you grew up around bad oxygen and tree fires and whatever the case may be all your life. And if you ever have an issue, put a straw in your mouth, a little tiny one, and try breathing through that for half an hour. And then you'll feel like we feel. And you'll know how we feel. And it's not the prettiest thing to feel, to have to do that. But that's how we feel most of the time. Mm-hmm. So don't belittle us. We're the same people as you. We just have a disease and you don't.
On that, Scott, I want to thank you for talking to me today, for answering some questions. I hope it's been beneficial to you as well as it will be to our listeners, and myself included. I am learning from this. I am always learning more and more about other respiratory issues that aren't asthma, because I feel like I know a lot about that. And with that, I do like to end with a specific outro that I ask all my listeners. Whether you have asthma, COPD, or nothing, every breath we take is a gift, a reminder of our resilience, our drive to keep going, and our power to define our own limits. With a single breath, you have the potential to move mountains and change the world. So with that in mind, I have one final question for you. If you had only one last breath, but with it the power to influence the world, what would that message be?
That's a hell of a question. Be generous with your time and help those who need help.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wheeze. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wheeze, and or follow me at the Asthma Runner for more updates. Keep breathing strong, and remember, your potential has no limits. Until next time.